Welcome to Fighting Back, news talk, current events, and political commentary. Now here's your host of Fighting Back, Ron Ludders.
Thanks for the applause, Mom. Welcome to the show tonight. Mom is always great, isn't she?
She's great.
She loves me.
Wonderful. She's got a lot of hands.
She was an octopus.
That's right.
At any rate, thank you for watching us tonight on Hub Radio. This is Fighting Back, and we have a really good show tonight. You're going to have to hang on. First of all, we have Josh Bernstein, the original badass.
That's right, from Josh Bernstein, Uncensored.com.
The bald-headed badass, too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
Hair
I'd like to
looks
know
good
who your barber is. At any rate, and we have Mr. Ray Michaels.
Hello, everyone.
And we appreciate you joining us tonight. And before we get going, I want to tell you once again, I'd like you to all go to, we need comments. We want to hear your comments. We've had a few negative comments the other day, and I just wear those with a badge of courage. You know,
I love negative comments. I get them all the time.
They're really nice because you're getting into somebody's head. You know?
Not on my website, though.
At any rate, please give your comments, like us, join us, share us, and we appreciate that. And we'd like to once again thank Jason over at Wimpkin. He's not been feeling well again, and we hope that you're getting better. But we looked at the latest numbers in the last 6 weeks. We had well over 2 million views.
Yes, that's great.
So thank you all.
I'm really excited about that. So thank you for tuning in. And this is across the country and around the world. And we have friends in the Pacific Islands. We have friends in Africa and England. And nobody so far from Russia. We have a little Russian down here at the barber shop. It's his birthday today. And I thought he wanted some vodka, but he didn't. He wanted cheesecake. So he's an American.
It's tough to get
now.
Cheesecake in Russia.
It is, but he's an American now. No vodka for birthday, just cheesecake. At any rate, we have Mr. Josh Bernstein, and we have a lot to talk about here. As soon as we're over, we're going to speak with a young man who was in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, and you're going to find out some of the really crazy things that happened there.
Isn't that called the Insurrection Day?
It was called the Armed Insurrection.
It's called the Infiltration Day. Let's call it what it is.
But
is that a new motion picture coming out?
It could be.
First of all, the only
When's Clint Eastwood going to do a real true story on it, right?
That's right.
The only arms that were there were held by the Capitol Police.
That's correct.
And were attached to other people as they walked in.
In the insurrection, we have some videos showing the insurrection, which to me looked like a peaceable march to support their First Amendment rights to petition the Congress for grievances, and we'll get into that when we come back. But right now, we're going to talk about the Arizona audit. America's audit.
Couple things we want to talk about. Karen Fann, the Arizona Senate President, is a great patriot. She is doing a wonderful job in her role and her capacity. However, not everybody is right all the time. And she did an interview on One American News, and she was pressed by Natalie Harp, the commentator, that what can we do now that we know that there is a minimum of 107,550 illegal ballots, and that's only the preliminary, folks. We haven't even seen the full report, which certainly is going to be way higher than that. But she said something that has, I would say, disturbed a lot of people, especially those that understand the Constitution and understand the plenary power of the legislature in particular. And she said that they cannot decertify or recall the electors. Well, I'm here to tell you that that is incorrect. According to Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, it grants state legislatures the power to choose electors. Moreover, Clause 2 vests complete plenary power in the states, not the federal government. Clause 2 also gives the state legislatures the plenary power to oversee and conduct all elections and to make sure that they were done fairly, and giving them the right to perform checks and balances, which is exactly what is happening right now, in the form of auditing the votes in their respective state. It also gives them the right to protect the elections from fraud and corruption. Now, the second thing that Karen Fann said was that there's never been a situation like this before. Now, granted, she may be correct in the fact that there hasn't been one where it's happened in 6 to 7, 8 states, hell, maybe even all 50 states, or if you're Barack Obama, 57 states, but I digress. It has happened before. It has happened, and it's happened, believe it or not, in Hawaii. In 1960, in the election of JFK and Nixon. Let's take a little stroll here down memory lane, shall we? The 1960 presidential election in Hawaii was held on November 8th, 1960. As part of the 1960 United States presidential election, this was the first presidential election in which Hawaii participated. The state had been admitted to the Union just over a year earlier. The islands favored Democrat John F. Kennedy by the narrowest of margins, 115 votes or 0.06%. The state voted more Republican than the national average for the first time and did the same again by less than a percentage point in a two-party vote share in 1972. Now, initially it appeared that Republican candidate Richard Nixon had won in the state of Hawaii, as he led by 141 votes ahead of JFK during the first count. However, a court-ordered recount was still underway when Hawaii's Republican governor signed the certificate from the GOP electors, giving the state's 3 electoral votes to Nixon. On the same day, the Democrats' electors also issued a certificate awarding the votes to Kennedy. The final recount showed that JFK had actually prevailed by 115 votes, forcing the governor to sign the second set of electors and certify them for the Democratic candidate. Both certificates had arrived in Washington by the time Congress convened in January 1961, with then Vice President Nixon charged with presiding over a joint session to certify his own election loss. Hearing no objections, Nixon ordered the Democratic certificate counted and ignored the accompanying Republican certificates, even though it also bore the governor's signature as required by federal law. And finally, there is this from the constitutional scholar John Eastman. Section 2 of Title 3 of the United States Code says, when a state had an election and has failed to make a choice on the day that was prescribed by law, meaning that the choice was under fraudulent circumstances, the electors can be made on a subsequent date in such a manner as to the legislature in some states may direct. So the bottom line is, we don't have to live with a stolen election. And Karen Fann and the Arizona Senate have the plenary power in their constitutional authority to change the outcome, and they should do that.
You know, Josh, I'm curious because she actually mentioned, if I remember correctly, that it would be up to the Attorney General in the state. And other people have said, no, it's the Secretary of State, no, it's the governor. But what actually does the Constitution say? Does it mention any other elected officials?
It says clearly that the state legislatures, so I would assume then that would be the House and the Senate, have the plenary power to conduct and oversee elections. Therefore, they also have the ability and the power to certify and decertify elections based on whether or not there was fraud.
You know, Josh, that's one of the things that has really upset me of late. Now, I'm not a constitutional scholar by any means, but I have read the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And Ray, it's very clear. There can be no doubt, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves, is that our political types do not know the documents which run and rule our country.
Well, Ron, you may know this, or Josh, you may know. So everybody was so excited when the governor and the Secretary of State certified the election, but where did that come from? It's not constitutionally. Is it in the state constitution?
Well, they committed a crime, let's face it, because we're now finding out that the results that they certified are not accurate, and that the certified results are a lot different and should be certified at different results, thereby awarding the true winner of the state of Arizona, which is Donald J. Trump Jr. So for him to have signed off, as well as Secretary Hobbs, your favorite person.
Hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Is this the same Secretary of State Hobbs,
What did she say?
I think she called Donald Trump supporters neo-Nazis.
That's correct.
Now, just aside here, today, Carrie Lake, running for governor, whom we had on this very show,
Yes.
has called the caller of names here, Hobbs, to remove herself from any responsibilities for the 2022 election, since she will be on the ballot running for governor. So
Talk about
that's
conflict
interesting.
of interest.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. She
So
should be
we
charged with a
see once again
felony.
where the Democrat candidates don't seem to understand the proprieties involved here. When you're in the election, you should not be the one that runs the election.
Well, here's what I could. When you're an elected official, you represent the people. It's not your own opinion. It's not what you think is right. It's you represent the people. So everybody had been yelling and screaming, something is wrong. Something is wrong. We don't know what it is, but something is wrong here. And he disregarded the voice of the people, as well as the Secretary of State, and just said, well, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to do this. Yet he didn't even have the constitutional power to do what he did. He could have easily said, you know what? According to the Constitution, it's up to the legislature. I'm going to yield back to them.
Exactly.
Because I am uncertain about this and I represent you.
That's
and
all he had to do.
Right?
That's all he had to do, exactly. And here's the thing. Because he certified fraudulent results, he should be arrested and tried and convicted, as should Katie Hobbs, as should the entire Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, and certainly Kelly Dixon. Who's Kelly Dixon? Kelly Dixon is the Assistant Director of Elections for Maricopa County, who put out a directive saying from October 23rd till November 2nd, use ballpoint pens only, because, they don't bleed through. But on Election Day, make sure and switch to Sharpies, okay?
All right,
now,
so
there's more to that even.
Okay, all right. So how do you know this as a fact?
Well, I mean, it's common knowledge now. It's all over the news.
Plus,
out
there
there.
was a
Plus
there
this was
an email.
Actually,
This was-
yeah.
and
Did I bring it? I
had
think
been-
I did.
It
I
had
did.
been made.
Because
It had
Here's
been
her
made
email.
public.
I'll read it to you.
Because there's one thing for certain. When Josh says something, he doesn't pull it out of the air.
Nope.
He does extensive research on it. He has the documentation in front of him. He will never say anything that
Here
he
it
is
is, right
not
here.
fully vetted. So go ahead.
This
on
is what her email said. Thank you all for supporting the historic election from, I'm trying to read my own handwriting. From my seat in the command center today, I finally had the chance to marvel at all the numbers and feel grateful for all that you have done. Next, we've heard you and we know that you are hearing issues about Sharpie markers. So in other words, she's already even admitting that they know that there's issues and problems. Starting tomorrow, 10/23, and through the 2nd of November, we are asking that all clerks hand voters ballpoint pens rather than markers. However, please switch to Sharpies on Election Day. Please message this to your inspectors and ensure that they can cascade this information and change immediately to everyone on the board.
All right, now what does this say about her? Because she knew, and I think it's even listed on the actual
ballot says
Right, it
do
says
not use Sharpies.
It says it right on the back.
So her giving this directive, I mean, what is this? What does this mean?
So there's three things. First and foremost, she knew that the ballpoint pens wouldn't bleed through. That's number one. Okay. Number two, she knows that early voting was going to be dominated by fraudulent votes and Democrats. Number three, she knew that on Election Day, because Republicans and Trump supporters don't trust early voting and they want to make sure that their vote counts and that they can vote on Election Day, the majority of people that were going to vote on Election Day. So obviously, switch to Sharpie markers so that you can spoil over 168,000 votes. And by the way, she voted for Mark Kelly, and she gave money to Act Blue. So you have the Assistant Director of Elections in Maricopa County giving money to a Democrat candidate on the ticket for the Senate, as well as giving money to Act Blue, which is basically the communist funding arm for George Soros.
Now, if those of you that don't believe this, these are public documents now. They've been published for actually last November, I believe they were published when all of this began. So I would encourage you, as we all would, do your own research. We believe we've done proper research and we have the correct answers here, but we would.
I stand by everything I said.
So who is the governing body that should actually call this person out and do whatever is necessary to correct this?
Well, I would say if we were looking at people that were going to be honest and impartial,
Yes.
I would say that probably the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, but
They
they're
oversee.
in the tank.
They oversee.
Right.
And
so-
ultimately, the legislature does.
yeah, the legislature.
But in
they could
between
bring
is
criminal
the,
charges.
In
I would
between, though,
assume.
is Katie Hobbs, the one who says
Right.
that all Republican
We're coming for you,
supporters are supporters
We're coming for
of
you.
Trump are neo-Nazis. Yes, we think that you don't deserve to move on in your political career.
You should be in jail or buried
But
underneath it.
this is something, our Monday show, I think it's up on YouTube, is it, Mr. DeSanti? Please watch that show. We have had some really good discussions. We had Randy Pullen,
Yes.
former GOP state chairman, former member of the RNC, and he was one of the top leaders in the audit down at the
Yeah,
Coliseum.
he was working directly with Ken Bennett.
And Ken Bennett, and he came here and he was telling us some of these things that, I mean, there's an old expression: you can't write a script for a movie that's this bizarre.
Yeah.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
And
So given just this information, I'm sure that's going to be compiled with the entire report that's being done, because they've seen a lot of bleed over. I mean, we heard it when President Fan had her update, and they said, it's like a target and it needs to line up, but it was all misprinted.
I was there,
The
sitting there
calibration.
watching it.
So when you certify something, you're certifying that the equipment is working right.
Right. Checks and
that-
balances.
Right. That you have enough paper, that the
And the
each-
paper is the correct paper?
and each machine is calibrated correctly to be able to print out. Because I mean, it was a fiasco. You could live on one side of Maricopa County, go all the way to the other, and they would have to print it out for your precinct. I mean, that's a disaster waiting to happen anyway.
well, the bottom line on all this stuff is, when push comes to shove, and they still the state senate audit team does not still have all the things that they were requested in the subpoena, so they're in violation of the subpoena. And here's the thing: they authorized something. We found out that they do not have the passwords to the Dominion equipment.
Right.
Okay, so if Dominion has the passwords, but the county doesn't, it's quite apparent that the election was run by Dominion
Correct.
and not the Maricopa County officials.
Which abrogates the responsibility
Which is
of the
totally
Maricopa
and
County Board of
absolutely against the
Supervisors
law.
and all
Yeah.
election officials, making it null and void, and it wasn't a certifiable election, which is exactly why Wendy Rogers is correct that it should be a new election called.
And I always come back to the same thing. They are in office because we, the people, have consented. It is consent of the governed. But when they do things that are like this, that we don't like, I can honestly say, I didn't consent for you to do that. I didn't consent for you to change from a ballpoint pen to a marker on the election
Right,
day. I
right.
didn't consent for you not to allow a proper audit. I didn't consent for you to say, no, you can't do the audit here where the machinery is, where the routers are. I didn't consent to any of that. So they can't be in a position to say, well, we're going to stand firm because we represent you. Well, they don't represent me. Do
Exactly.
they represent you out there? Is this how you would have handled it?
Their behavior was abysmal, to say the very least. And then when we get this thing and we find out that they're not going to turn over certain equipment, passwords, and so forth, routers, you have to ask yourself, what
What are you
on
hiding?
earth is going on? What are you hiding?
Now-
and if you're hiding something from the public, you don't deserve to be in office.
Now, how many can you run for the position of sergeant of arms? Can you run for that? Is that
Could
an
I
elected,
personally?
Is that an elected
Oh,
position?
boy, I'd be a busy person,
No,
let me tell you.
Because it would be fun just to be. How do you get chosen to be the sergeant of arms?
I'm not 100% sure on
Let's
that.
find out.
Well, it's the legislature. Each body
think
has
they
their own.
I know, but if they pick them from
I
where?
think they pick someone.
the party in power that is
I
the
know,
one
but
that
they pick
chooses.
it from a pool of what? I want to be part of that. I want to be the sergeant of arms.
Yeah, I want to be the one, exactly. Yeah,
Okay, Sarge.
that's right.
Do you have 3 little
I
stripes
just
on
wasn't
your
sure
arm
if it was
there?
a legislator who's elected in.
You could be
or
the
they just-
sergeant major.
Sergeant of legs.
There you go.
So, at any rate, what else do you have here, Mr.
Oh
Josh?
boy, what do I have? I got all
what
kinds of
doesn't
stuff.
he have?
Yeah, really.
What doesn't he have?
You know, folks, you should be very worried about the United States Capitol Police. Every single dictator that has rose to power and seized power illegally through a coup, whether it be violent or non-violent, has had a secret police.
Gestapo,
KGB, Stasi, you name it.
FBI. Oops, I didn't say that.
The FBI is now the secret police, sort of, in America. But here's what's interesting. The United States Capitol Police are called the United States Capitol Police. Why? Because they're supposed to overlook the Capitol.
The Capitol.
They're not supposed to be in Texas or Florida or Ohio or Iowa or anywhere else, okay? Now, here's what's even crazier than this. The FBI, the CIA, the NSA, most of the intel community, they are subject to FOIA requests, right? Freedom of Information Act requests.
Right.
They are also subjected to investigations, internal investigations, and inspector generals. Well, guess what? The U.S. Capitol Police are not. They do not have to be held responsible through FOIA requests, nor do they ever have to create any type of reports, or they don't have to be inspected by an inspector general. They're actually part of the legislative branch. So, if you were a dictator and you were going to take over a country, maybe America, I don't know, any dictator, right? Would you want to use the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, which you know have to be in compliance with FOIA requests and inspector general reports? Or would you possibly use the one branch of secret police that doesn't have to be accepted and put under the microscope of FOIA and inspector general reports?
And let me ask you this. Who's responsible for the Capitol Security and Capitol Police?
Well, Congress is.
And who is the speaker, the most powerful of any officer in the Congress?
Yeah, well, brain freeze Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi,
And
guys.
she's the one.
And if that's not scary, I don't know what is.
What she's doing is illegal, number one. They don't have the constitutional authority, number two, to expand beyond the Capitol. Now, my question is, where are these weak suck, yellow-bellied Republicans? Why aren't they passing legislation to block them expanding this United States police force? And also, why aren't they defunding? Look, I believe in the police. I want to see all the police funded. But hell, I'll say right now, let's defund the Capitol Police until Nancy and her minions decide that this is not a good idea and they're not going to expand.
Now,
and until then, they should be defunded.
For those of you out there who are kind of in the not really certain why we're bringing these things up, is just was it a few weeks ago that they said that the Capitol Police will now have satellite offices in different cities in different states.
Illegal.
And we sat here and we said, wait a second, why does the Capitol Police, who is only in charge of the Capitol, as you said, why do they have satellite? For what purpose? They're not protecting other capitals. It's the U.S. Capitol,
Correct.
not state capitals.
Which means they're not in jurisdiction.
So the whole reason, what we're talking about here is, how is it possible that this, what you are labeling now as a secret police, how do they have any right to go into any sovereign state, and under what authority do they have to look into state affairs or the citizens of those states?
Close your eyes. What do you see? Nothing.
And
They
we-
have zero.
And we know now,
Zero.
Yeah.
we know now that Ashley Babbitt was killed by a Capitol Police officer.
That is correct.
And we can't find her name, although we know her name, his name.
Oh, we know his name.
we-
all
I
right.
thought it's been now heavily
Well,
reported.
Charlie Kirk did go on
Yes, he did.
Morning Futures, and he did spill the beans on her name. I believe he's the first person publicly, media figure-wise, that has done that. I've reported on it, as much as even a month ago on joshbernsteinuncensored.com, but others have not.
Josh, one thing for certain, when you subscribe to joshbernsteinuncensored.com, you get information that you will not hear out there. And if you do hear it, it will be weeks and even months later because you've reported on it first.
And when I do a story, I deep dive, okay? I go into the very, very
You hold
deep
your nose
depths.
and go
I go
down.
all the way bottom. Right. I don't
So
hit the
deep,
surface.
deep.
I'm not treading water on the
Last
surface.
I saw him in real life, he was in a snorkel. Had a
That's
snorkel.
right. I got a
He's
snorkel.
deep
And
diving.
it's a long
That's right.
snorkel. That's
Yeah,
a
it
long
is, for
one.
sure.
Yeah. So it's so you always have this breaking information that you then share with us. You you put it on your website. Eventually, we'll get a hold of it as well here.
I didn't write all these up today. Every single day, 7 days a week, I drop a brand new segment on joshbernsteinuncensored.com. So what you're seeing here are each day's notes for the past couple of days. So when I bring them in on Wednesday, I have a lot of information that I've already written up a few days ago.
So what can we do, Ron? You've been in this in this marketplace for such a long time, here doing conservative action for a long, long time. What can we do to make sure that President Fan is well aware of what the Constitution pretty much mandates? The plenary power is there for the state. How do we advise her? What can we do to very, very respectfully?
It's difficult, Ray, because none of us have a real pipeline to her. She's somewhat isolated. However, this show has a lot of good friends. Wendy Rogers, who you're going to be
Borelli,
interviewing,
yeah.
Sonny Borelli, other senators
I sent
here.
this, by the way, the Karen Fan is Wrong video to both of them.
And we have that ability. It's difficult to get directly to her, but we have Mesnard. We have some really good Republican senators that are really on this. Let me ask you this: do you have anything more to? Because we're in a good spot to segue into our next segment. If you don't have anything else, because our next segment we're going to talk to somebody who was really in D.C. on January
Up
6th.
close and personal.
Up close and personal. We're going to have some videos of some of the activities there, and we're going to get a real life story as to what happened. And so, if this is a good spot,
It's a good
Yeah,
spot.
and
We
you won't see this anywhere else. Nobody is showing you this
It-
information.
you know,
This is
let-
breaking
let-
news yet again here on Hub Radio Phoenix.
Ray, we had one of our correspondents from Florida, Kimmy Gonzalez,
Yeah.
and they had 10 rallies this past week. 10 rallies around the country to get our political prisoners out of jail. And believe it or not, there was only one Republican congressman that attended one of these 10
Congress
rallies.
or Senate.
Yes, only one Republican, and that
Paul
was
Gosar.
our very own Paul Gosar.
So
Yeah,
thank you.
I saw him
Thank
the
you
other
again.
night.
And Republicans in office, shame on you. We're disappointed. Come on, get off your
can't
duffs
let
and
these
get
kids
something
rot.
done.
No.
So
These
when
are
we get,
Americans.
you're watching Hub Radio, and when we come back, we're going to have this wonderful young man served in the United States Marine Corps with honors, and we're going to have him on the show. So don't you go away. We'll be right back.